Good morning. I want to talk just a little bit today about Good Friday, mainly because I've always struggled with why do we call it Good Friday. Now, I grew up in the church and I understood that Easter was this great day, that we celebrate Jesus rose from the dead, he conquered death, the tomb is empty. But Friday, Good Friday, was the day that Jesus was crucified. And so it didn't seem very good. I mean, I've seen the videos, the documentaries, the historians, the doctors talking about how bad the crucifixion was and what happened to Jesus. He was beaten so badly that nothing seemed good about it. And so why would we call something so bad Good Friday? I mean, even Jesus' words, as I read here in Mark chapter 15, in verse 34, as Jesus is dying, he says, "And at the ninth hour, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, 'Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani,' which means, my God, why have you forsaken me?" So this is a moment of deep, dark sadness. Why would we call it Good Friday? Well, as I've studied, it was pointed out to me that Jesus is actually quoting a psalm from David. In Psalm 22, actually, starts off as a lament psalm. It's a song that starts deep sadness, but it gives us some hints as to why we can call Good Friday good. And so I just want to read that, and I'm going to read from Eugene Peterson's version of it, the Message Bible, because he puts it in a very straightforward way that I think is easy to understand. And so in Psalm 22, verse 1, it says, "God, God, my God, why have you dumped me miles from nowhere?" So then he goes on to just explain how deep, sad, and dark things are. He says, my enemies are surrounding me. I feel like I'm just out here in the middle of nowhere all by myself. And then about halfway through, he shifts a little bit and starts to give us this glimpse of what is to come. And the end of this chapter is so great for what is going to come on Easter. So halfway through in verse 22, he says, "Here's the story I'll tell my friends when they come to worship. And I'll punctuate it with hallelujahs." So he starts moving to this time of praise in the middle of his sadness. And so you see where Jesus, it starts off sad, where Jesus would have said these words because he was feeling a deep sadness, but then it moves to worship. And at the end of the chapter, it's so great. I love what he says. The psalmist says in verse 27, "From the four corners of the earth, people are coming to their senses, are running back to God. Long-lost families are falling on their faces before him. God has taken charge. From now on, he has the last word. All the power mongers are before him worshiping. All the poor and powerless too are worshiping, along with those who never got it together. They're worshiping." And here's the key part for us today. He says, our children and their children will get in on this, on the praise. As the word is passed along from parent to child, babies not yet conceived will hear the good news that God does what he says. And so why can we call it a Good Friday? Because even though it started off deep and dark and sad, we know what's coming. That on Sunday, Jesus is going to rise. And we get to be this benefactor of people that are telling this story over and over, that babies not yet conceived will hear this good news. So we know that no matter how bad things may seem right now, that we celebrate this Easter, that the grave is empty, that Jesus has conquered death forever. And so we have a future hope. And so that's why we can celebrate today being Good Friday.